Hello and welcome to the big picture. The struggle of the ex-servicemen for one rank, one pension continues as the government is still unable to come to a decision on it. The BJP, which had promised in its manifesto last year to implement it as soon as it came to power, is unable to deliver 15 months later. The Prime Minister, Defence Minister and the Finance Minister have all gone on record that they accept the concept of OROP in principle, but they say that it is caught up in technical difficulties and arithmetical calculations, and also because they are not able to reconcile the various interpretations. It may be recalled that one rank, one pension existed till 1973. It was terminated after the Third Pay Commission came into effect that year. Ever since, the demand for restoring it has been on. However, after the Sixth Pay Commission, the demand intensified as the discrepancies in pensions got further exaggerated. The Bhagat Singh Koshyari Committee of the Parliament in 2011 gave a report strongly recommending OROP. The UPA government, after much dilly-dallying, finally accepted it, and in April 2014, just before its term got over, even announced its implementation. However, ever since the NDA government came into office in May 2014, the issue remains unresolved. So why has the OROP evaded a solution for so long? What are the repercussions of implementing it and also not implementing it? We will discuss all this today with an eminent panel of guests. I have with me Ajay Prasad, former Defence Secretary, Government of India, Lieutenant General Utpal Bhattacharya, Commodore retired C. Uday Bhaskar, Director, Society for Policy Studies, Mohan Guruswamy, Defence Analyst, and Rahul Bedi, Senior Journalist. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Ajay Prasad, you know, when the UPA government announced in 2014 that last year that we will be implementing it, or we are implementing it, and what was the formula which was agreed upon at that time, and why is that formula not acceptable now? Okay, I think we have lost him because the rains here. Uday Bhaskar, can you answer that question?
Well, I would say that the problem begins when the Sixth Pay Commission, in its review for the entire central government and the employees, introduced the concept of the NFU. They allowed for the equivalent of an upgrade. NFU is what it is called, meaning that in the civil services, everybody but the armed forces, that if your, they call it, or somebody in your seniority bracket went up to the higher level, perhaps the best illustration is to say that almost every IAS officer reaches the level of a joint secretary, and then you have two upper levels, the additional secretary and the secretary to the Government of India. So the Sixth Pay Commission introduced what they called as the NFU provision, meaning that if your batchmate became an additional secretary and you were still at the joint secretary level and there were no posts, you got the pay of the additional secretary while you continued. So basically you were getting a financial benefit. And they created the apex layer, meaning that from the additional secretary to the secretary, that in case there were no vacancies, but one of your batchmates became a secretary, then all of you could get that benefit of the higher scale. And this is where
the higher scale as far as the salary was concerned.
And that also kicks into the pension.
Into the pension fund.
That you created a cadre called the apex scale.
Right.
Today, all secretaries to the Government of India and people in concurrent positions have an apex scale, which is actually OROP. Meaning that if you're a secretary to the Government of India and you retire in 2015, the secretary who retired in 1995 would also qualify for the same pension, which is called the apex level. And that is how you introduce what I would call as an anomaly. And this particular provision of the NFU, meaning that by service, you move to the higher grade, was not made admissible to the armed forces. So you introduced a certain what I would call as distortion in terms of the pay scales. And then, as you know, once you sort of retire, your pension is calculated on the last pay drawn.
Right.
So you introduced what I would call as a playing field that was adversarial to the military as an institution. And this is what has, in a way, exacerbated the entire thing. And the Sixth Pay Commission also had a cutoff of 2006. So you created two different levels of pensioners, those before and those after. And I think the current sort of demand of the armed forces or something that they've been asking for is that whereas in Mrs. Gandhi's time, pre-1973, you got almost 75% of your last pay as pension, that was brought down, the civil services have come up, and finding that modus vivendi, whereby you have an equitable pensionary provision, especially when your troops and your jawans are retiring at a relatively young age,
Exactly.
35 onwards. So all this has created a situation where the Fauji, the military veteran, is now progressively being pushed down in terms of the benefits that accrue after retirement.
Okay. Mr. Ajay Prasad? Mr. Ajay Prasad, would you agree that, in 2006, this anomaly started, and also that, I was asking the question earlier when UPA government agreed to implement this in 2014, that's last year, what was the formula which they had agreed upon, and why is that formula not acceptable now?
I'm sorry I missed the earlier part of the discussion, so I do not know exactly the issue being discussed at the moment. But to answer your question, I have one comment to make.
Yes.
And I say this, that whatever the interpretations or the disentanglement of the OROP issue you may say, the time for all this is long past. Now the question is that the government, in its wisdom, first the UPA and then the NDA, both have promised and have agreed to a definition which was also announced in the parliament. So there is no case now of going back on any of these provisions. The government should implement it as it had been decided earlier, and now I don't think it behoves anybody to start reinterpreting the various clauses or redefining the terms. So I would say this debate is not necessary at this stage.
That's interesting. Rahul, Bedi, why is this debate necessary now? Why has this debate become necessary now? Ajay Prasad, as he rightly points out, both the UPA and the NDA have accepted in principle. Then why is this debate continuing?
Well, I agree with the previous speaker, Mr. Prasad, that the debate is infructuous. I think as far as the OROP is concerned, it's just a matter of time before it is implemented. But the question is how justly is it going to be implemented, and when is it going to be implemented? I think these are the two issues. As Commodore Uday Bhaskar said, I think these, going back to 1973 or 1976 or 1982, I think is really, frankly, irrelevant. But I also want to make the point that once the OREP is cleared and is approved, I think all the antagonism and all the anger that there is in the ex-servicemen is largely going to evaporate. And I think the attacks that are being made upon the NDA government are going to turn around to approval of the NDA government, and the ex-servicemen are going to turn around and say that this is the only government that was able to implement such a grant. Now, according to General VP Malik, the former army chief, the difference is of about 5,300 crores between what the ex-servicemen want and what the government is willing to give. And that is really the problem between a settlement and not. So I think it's just a matter of time before this is done. And I think the Bihar elections are going to be the cutoff point. And I think it's going to happen before the Bihar elections. And that is, I think, borne out by events over the last 2 or 3 days.
Okay, that's interesting. Lieutenant General, would you agree with that? There is just a point, it's just a matter of time. And so just wait.
No, let's get certain thing in perspective. As Commodore Uday has mentioned, that our men, they retire because to keep the army young, they recruit at 18. After 18 years of colour service, they generally retire at 18, 36, 35, 36, with the airmen, sailors or the army men. Similarly, the JCOs, even if you become a class 2 gazetted officers, they also retire another 10 years. You give them and retire the 45, 46. That's the time the children will have to go for a higher education just coming out of the school, daughter's marriage, the ailing parents, then they have to go for a house. So what happened prior to 1973, it was not exactly OROP. The point is last pay drawns used to, the pensions used to be for them. I mean, let's basically concentrate on them, used to get 70%. Today, post 73, with their last pay drawn, and well, you have done how much? 18 years. We add another 9 years or 10 years, it becomes 27, still falling short of 33. So their pension is actually 37%. 37%, not from 70%, it has been to, the intention was brought to bring it down to 50, but ultimately, willy-nilly, it is 37%. Can you imagine the family of a soldier, the family pension is now 3,500, which you might be paying a lot more to your maid. The point is, so, and as you mentioned, April, I mean, we need not go back to 71, 73, before, right from the first pay commission, 56 there was an anomaly, 66 there was an anomaly. So we will not go into that, because all those calculations have been made and arithmetical translations and transliterations. The main thing is it has been accepted April 9 to 2014, because February 2014, during the pre-elections speech, the present Prime Minister, he was not Prime Minister at that time, at Rewari promised OROP. So Congress in a huddle had to say that during their last budget presentations, which was April 2014. Let's not forget in the UPA 1's first election manifesto, it was there. In 2004, when...
So it took 10 years for them?
Yeah, 10 years it took, exactly, for them to announce. But announcing means what? They, at that time they knew it requires 8,300 rupees. 8,300 crores. They, Chidambaram ji allocated 500 crores. Your grandson's asking for a kasata ice cream, which you know costs 40 rupees. You give him 5 rupees, go and have kasata. It's something like this. Then, this time, our present finance minister, who was also defense minister,
right,
Jetli ji, he allocated 1,000 crores. Means it was what sort of a, at some times, we say it in army, you have to take the command decisions. The bureaucracy is very, very important. They are playing a great role. There's a layer in the administrations. But at some times when the Prime Minister has given it a word and it has been announced and it has been sanctioned, then probably they will have to go back to the bureaucracy and tell them, well, this is the decision,
but that
and
has
implement it.
That seems to have not happened. Mohan, where do you think the hitch lies?
The hitch lies in the principle of the whole thing. The economics of it mitigate against this. You know, we've not had a discussion in this country because everybody's put electoral politics there and they've held a gun to the country. And I've said, you know, give it now. Now what you is a beautiful gated community where government employees, 23 million of them, live with big salaries, higher salaries than they get outside. You know, a sweeper in a municipal corporation gets 5 times what a sweeper outside gets. And so it goes up. Secretary to government gets over £1 lakh rupees. You know,
and
it's all questionable. You know, the point is that if you use up 8% of your GDP on salaries and pensions, what are you going to give this country? Total development expenditure.
Mohan,
no, you got to address this issue. Now that is why this clamor to get into the government. I saw armed forces.
Mohan, you're digressing.
I'm not digressing.
The issue now is that do you agree that both the UPA government and the NDA government both have accepted this? No. Now, why? What is the hitch in implementing it? That is the question.
Because they are faced.
Because, you know, I don't think we can go back to
because they are faced with reality. The reality is that the military's pension will be 54,000 crores. And a wage bill of 75,000 crores.
In fact, some people say it will be 75,000 crores.
No, it will go up.
Yes.
After the pay commission comes, it will start ballooning. Because the difference between the 4th pay commission and the 5th pay commission was salaries was 67%. So when you talk of this cut-off point, the salaries went up. So therefore, the cut-off point was removed. And said, okay, you will get your last pay. So, you know, if you see facts selectively, then you come to certain conclusions. But point is, can the country afford this? We cannot afford. Now today, there are 5 lakh policemen posts vacant. We can't afford any more policemen. because such salaries have become very high. And where are you going to stop? Now, where are you going to
So
stop?
what are you trying to say? You're trying to say that this is something which the government cannot
all I'm saying is
afford
that
it?
politicians, bad politics are going to land this country in a mess, and everybody is playing this game of bad politics. 10 service chiefs write a letter to government saying that morale of the army is going to get affected if you don't.
Do you think it's getting affected?
I don't know. Do they know? Have they been out to the field? I don't think so. I was in Mao the other day, and I spoke about this. Nobody reacted to this. The point is that the military is a different service. Tomorrow you cannot say, I will not go to Tamil Nadu because the Tamilians will get offended. The point is that, you are supposed to...
So you're saying that this is something which is not affordable to the government?
No, it should have been discussed properly. It was irresponsible politics.
It has been discussed for years.
By whom? By whom? They put a demand, and these people go to rallies and raise their hands. Ex-chief and the next prime minister.
General, I want both of you to respond to this. General.
It has been discussed number of times. That's why the Koshyari committee came in.
Right.
You had shown it in your slides some time back. Bharat Singh Koshyari committee, after the number of discussions, especially after the fourth pay commission.
The parliamentary committee of politicians, for heaven's sake.
Whatever
it's a parliamentary committee.
No, in the pay commissions, last time that IIM Ahmedabad, Mr. Dholakia was also there. So such professionals which we feel, the professionals must be there. Yes, they should be there. Everybody is, of course, is required for the nation building. They were all there for the fourth pay commission, fifth pay commission in all these committees. And it was decided. The point is, remember, in all other countries, we don't need to go to the European countries. All other countries, there is an assured second career for our soldiers. Let's talk about right from the bottom of the pyramid. There is an assured second career for the...
there is no assurance, such assurance here.
Precisely what has gone wrong. Because when this central paramilitary forces were created, the idea was that...
They don't retire. They don't retire at 35.
No, listen. Retired Jawans would be absorbed into them. And they would go into them. Now, the IPS fought for a quota saying we can't have all Jawans, we also need to recruit young people.
Okay.
So now that quota has gone.
No, I want Uday Bhaskar to respond to what he said earlier.
See, I think what Mohan is trying to draw attention to is to say that the economic underpinning of the entire sort of pensionary commitment of the government of India needs to be reviewed. I mean, that is a fair point as far as the economics are concerned. But I think, Girish, what we are addressing just now is the OROP and the kind of sentiment that has been aroused, particularly after the police action in Jantar Mantar when the protesting veterans were manhandled. That's the reason why this has come now into public focus. As someone who studied this, I would just make the point that the question of pension for retired military personnel has not been addressed in an equitable manner. It has been devoid of professional integrity, meaning that going back to Mrs. Indira Gandhi's time when she was Prime Minister, and you see successive governments who have been asked to review this and come up with some kind of a rationalization, the lack of integrity, when I say that this is the real cause, is that the civilian bureaucracy, which was in the driver's seat, progressively gave unto itself meaning the civilian part of the spectrum, higher fiscal benefits and denuded
denied
it to the armed forces. And this point that Mohan made, this was a very good suggestion, saying that to ensure that you have a young army, you allow lateral entry, meaning
into various
at the age of 30 or whatever, you move them into the CRPF, the paramilitary, or even the state police.
Right.
But the same vested interest said no. This would lead to the militarization of India.
Okay, let me get Mr. Ajay Prasad in on this. Mr. Ajay Prasad, I mean, again, whenever there is a discussion on issues like this, the blame always is put on the bureaucracy. And you have been at the helm of that bureaucracy. How do you respond to this?
You see, now it has been said, and media has been saying this also, that everybody wants to give the OROP, but it is the bureaucracy which is somehow holding it up. Now, I don't subscribe to that theory. You have the political will being demonstrated and articulated at the highest level by the Prime Minister himself. And I don't see bureaucracy being in a position to thwart a person like Mr. Narendra Modi if he sets his mind to it. I think what
no,
is
we are
happening
not
is
talking of the present,
that
we are talking of
there
the
is
past.
an undercurrent. No, I agree that there have been distortions. There, Mr. Commodore Uday Bhaskar talked of the apex scale. That apex scale is also available to the higher echelons in the armed forces also. But yes, that certainly created a distortion. I don't. I agree with the view that that was, I think, the genesis of the problem. But now I think we have to find a way out of this. And the only thing I can see, I can quite understand the economic argument that was being made by Mr. Guruswamy a little while back, that the country cannot afford it. But that is something which both the UPA government and the NDA government, which before they went public with this announcement, should have carefully considered it, whether the government can afford this or not. Now, having done this, I don't think they can go back on it. That is the point that I am trying to make.
Mr. Prasad, you know, what is the arithmetical calculations which the finance minister talks of, and you know, what are the complications? Why should there be complications at this stage? And what are these different interpretations which they are talking about?
I wish I knew. I don't think anybody knows fully exactly what are the arithmetical interpretations that are being done. One was whether, you know, the date of implementation should be shifted to 2015 instead of 2014. Somebody was saying that, you know, the entitlement date should go to 2011. But frankly, I don't think there is much clarity on this subject as to what exactly the finance ministry is trying to do. Maybe the negotiators who are there on the part of the ex-servicemen, they have a feeling. I'm afraid I do not know exactly what is the kind of interpretation that is being considered at this moment.
Okay, Rahul, can you throw some light on this? What is this? What are these confusions?
Well, let's not get caught up in the past, as I said earlier.
No, now we are talking of the present.
Let's face the reality of today. I think the ex-servicemen are an extremely organized band of trade unionists, and I think the levels of hysteria that they've created in the media and in public are almost guaranteed to ensure that the OROP goes through. I think there's been political action over the last couple of days with the Principal Secretary of the Prime Minister requesting the ex-servicemen to suspend their agitation for the next 10 days. What's going to happen after 10 days, I don't think anybody can predict.
No, Rahul.
But I think it's fairly...
Rahul.
Sorry?
No, Rahul, the question is that what are these confusions, what are these arithmetical calculations which is being talked of, what are these various interpretations which is being talked of? You know, that is what that is where the problem seems to have got caught up with.
Well, Girish, I just want to come in here.
Uday.
I think it's a very
One second. Do you have any idea, Rahul?
From what I can gather, there are basically two problems. From what I can gather after speaking to various people, there are two problems. One is, as I said, there is a difference of about 5,000 crores. And secondly, as the former Defense Secretary said, there is a problem about the cutoff date. Is it going to be April 2014? Is it going to be 2011?
One second more. I want Uday Bhaskar to comment.
So there are various interpretations and various problems.
Turn of phrase that Rahul has used, suggesting that this is comparable to a trade unionist kind of position, is uncalled for. And I think this is the kind of, shall we say, sentiment which is causing a lot of angst as far as the Fauji community is concerned. Rahul is not alone. We have seen a similar kind of turn of phrase even in the editorials of some of our leading papers. And I say this with a lot of anguish, that it's a sad day for India if the general sentiment in civil society seems to be that what the veterans are seeking is the equivalent of a trade union agenda or demand, because that's not it. And I think some of us have tried to bring this into the public discourse to say that what has really been sullied is the image of the armed forces, the izzat, the honor, and all the intangibles that you have pushed the veterans or the retired community to such a point where over the last 8 to 10 years, this particular demand has been made seeking equity, an equitable pensionary arrangement which is available to various other parts of the government. That has not been taken on board, and we have this very sad spectacle of retired people going to the president's office and wanting to return their medals, and they don't even get an audience. Now, these are the kind of slights that I would say which have accumulated.
Absolutely.
So this suggestion that the Indian retired military community is seeking a path that is equivalent to a trade unionist agenda.
I think that is not an acceptable thing. Yes,
Just a minute.
very
You
quickly,
see,
sir.
all over the world, 100 years of the First World War is being, that celebration is on, where the Indian soldiers, Indian airmen and Indian sailors, they are being commended upon. First World War, there was about double the soldiers than, of course, Pakistan and India combined that time.
These are all
50 years, no, these are not rhetoric. 50 years you are completing after 1965 war, came Karan, Nichogil and all these things are all known. And this is the saddest day of the country where the expansionists will have to be at the focal point of the protest at Jantar Mantar. That is not required.
The service conditions are not the same because Jawans retired at the age of 35, so they've got a lot of active life ahead. So, you need an equitable solution for this.
You agree with me?
Yeah, but
That's
to that
why we are
extent.
seeking
But
an
you know that
equitable
you need a cutoff point. But you can't have this cascading forever. You go up to the 8th pay commission, you get that pension. You go to 9th pay commission, you get that pension.
No,
that
Mohan, I'm sure all this must have been discussed. And why is it that,
Apex can give it unto itself?
Who?
Why,
They have not given it on the... You are wrong, Uday, on that. You mentioned it earlier.
No, Mr.
They get
Mohan.
off. The civils, the lieutenant generals and generals have given it to themselves.
Mr. Prasad has accepted what he said, that there is some kind of a OROP as far as the apex
of the armed forces.
Of the IAS and IFS.
No. That's not correct. That's not correct. A secretary to government who retired in 2004 gets
Mr. Prasad, can you clarify on that before we end?
Yes.
We leave it to Mr. Prasad.
You see, the point that was being made earlier that a secretary who retires in 1995 gets the same pension as a secretary who will retire in 2015. That's not correct.
Okay.
There is no OROP. That the only linkage is that your pension is linked to the last pay drawn, but it doesn't retrospectively affect everybody who may have retired 20 years earlier. That is not a correct position.
No, I think Uday Bhaskar was talking about 2006 and later.
Post 2006.
Post 2006 6th pay commission. Anyway,
the solution has also been given that up to the rank of NCOs and the families, they should be given the cash.
Absolutely.
And thereafter the officers and JCOs, we can accept it in terms of bonds, which can be in cash later,
because the top two
not
ranks
immediately.
have given themselves OROP, so to say. And the others have been left behind.
No, but
that is a problem.
The point is that this is an issue which has been discussed ad nauseum for so many years. And at this stage, if we are going back to the basics, then there is a problem, serious problem there. But I hope that as soon as possible, as Rahul Bedi initially said, that this is just a matter of time. We hope it's a matter of time, and then all the old issues doesn't get raked up all over again. Thanks to all my guests. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue in the big picture same time on Monday. Meanwhile, have a great weekend.